The mindset is the hardest part of being an entrepreneur. When you open yourself up to knowing that, like, if you live in alignment and like serve with your gifts, the money is gonna come.
Hi, Katrina. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Oh, before we actually jump in fully, I should mention that my cat might try to come and bother us. So if you hear like meowing, or like literally if he just comes like fully into the computer, like it, I told you, like literally because I just got home from work, he's like, "Hi, Mom, I need attention." So
he's like, "Hi, remember me?"
Yeah,
it's okay. I like locked my dogs out of my office. I'm like, "Stay out, like, do not."
Yeah, that I wish that cats are just not like that. Like he just serves to, like, he needs his attention. So
totally, it's okay.
Random side note. No, anyway, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you hanging out with me for the next hour. I'm excited to chat. I think this is going to be a useful conversation. I was thinking about it on my drive home from work. I was like, I already have some thoughts that I want to ask you, because maybe we'll just start there. Let me just start. So part of my 2024 goals for the podcast, or something that I really want to start doing, is getting onto some databases for PR. And I know that you used to work in PR, so I would love to hear your thought process about when you used to work in PR and like the companies that you worked for, how you get onto those lists and databases that get you into like the big, media moments for your business.
So PR companies are always on the lookout for content creators or influencers, and you don't necessarily have to have thousands of followers to get on these lists. Now, a lot of the time we're looking for clients that have like great content, or influencers or partners, creators that have great content that shows that they know how to use a camera, they take great photos, or they're really putting together like creative reels or even TikToks. And a lot of the time the brands or the PR agencies will reach out to those creators to incentivize them to create content for their brand or whatever it is. So yeah, a lot of the time it is just putting yourself out there, starting to create your own content. I mean, when I think about the clients that I have, a lot of the time I'll just start going down the rabbit hole. If I have a mom with a skincare brand, I'm looking for moms that are creating beautiful content that I think would do a great job of capturing what my vision is, or what the vision for the brand is. So I'll go lurking through Instagram, and you don't have to have thousands of followers. A lot of the time for smaller businesses and brands, like, you could have 500, you could have 1,000. There's no sweet spot, but that's how you can start to get on those lists, by just starting to put your content out there and showing that you do a good job of creating high quality content.
This is just like a side note question.
Yeah.
PR firms are kind of like intermediaries between brands and creators, right? Yep. Like they usually have brands and they're trying to connect creators. They have creators and they're trying to connect brands. So how do you also go about like making sure that your content is good? Like for people who maybe are just starting a business and they don't even know where to start making content, like what kind of suggestions would you have for them?
I think practice is everything. Just know that the first couple reels or even photos that you take probably aren't going to be amazing. And maybe in a year you look back and you're like, yeah, that wasn't quite it. It's totally fine, but you just have to learn through doing. So even for my own brand, I've started to dive into the content creation aspect and starting to promote my business more through Instagram. And it's getting comfortable in front of the camera. If you're not going to put your face in front of the camera, it's getting comfortable with the angles that you're going to capture from. So just practice, just start, and know that you're going to get better, but it's going to take some time. And you just have to start.
Yeah, I have felt this way. I mean, even so, when I started my blog in April of last year, I started originally, like, it wasn't a podcast, it was just a blog. And I started making content about like entrepreneurialism, and like I was posting stuff every week, and I was like really in the hustle game. I was like, this is going to be the thing, and this is what I'm going to talk about. And like inevitably, like I it wasn't ended up what I wanted to talk about all the time. Like it's been such a trial and error for me with content in general, like throughout the many phases of my life. I think growing up with Instagram, like we were always using it in high school and stuff like that, and Snapchat. And then over time, like as I've changed myself and grown into myself, like my content has changed. And it wasn't until like maybe 2 weeks ago that I really started to love like the content that I was making. And I think specifically around the podcast, like I found a really great template that I'm obsessed with and now like super proud of the feed. And like even for myself personally, I love like a carousel moment where I'm like, here's what my life is looking like lately. And that to me has felt like the most authentic way for me to create content because it's easy for me. Like I always want to be taking pictures. It's just part of my personality. But it really was like about just trying on a million different hats and trying a million different styles and like figuring out what works for you. And like I have a couple of ideas of ways that I want to continue to branch out for the podcast specifically so people get to know me as the host a little bit more, but you know, still keeping it like podcast focused. But truly to your point, it has been like such a trial and error situation. And I have just, you just have to find like, I see it as like a Venn diagram between what you enjoy making, what like works for your brand. And then in the middle, I think is like what people really like respond to really well.
Yeah, totally. And I think that becomes really evident when you start to sell something. And when I first started my business, I was not good at selling my services and promoting my business through Instagram just because I didn't really know how to talk about it. And I think there's no shame in investing in programs or coaches that can help you learn how to sell. And what's so interesting is like a lot of the time we're our harshest critic. So we always think we need to be looking for like the hottest take or the most unique angle or the like most innovative way to tell a story. But sometimes that can actually confuse your target client because they actually want to be communicated to in like the language that they understand. So that's the really interesting thing when it comes to content creation is like, don't overthink it, just do. And the more you put out, the more you'll start to understand what works and what doesn't. You can't be too hard on yourself in the early stages because I think the only way you get better is by understanding what either worked or what didn't work in the past.
Yeah. And I think the hard thing too is to not get too caught up in the numbers game. I think it's easy to lose yourself in that process and to start to quantify like your success through those numbers. And that I think inevitably leads to burnout and it makes it not fun anymore. And like I had talked to a creator one of the early episodes on the podcast, and she was talking about how even really super successful creators still look at the numbers and they're like, oh, you know, this one didn't perform as well, or they know what kind of content isn't going to perform as well as others. But sometimes they sacrifice the numbers because it's something that they really wanted to make and that they enjoyed it. And that's something that I think about a lot too, because even for me, I can't help it.
Totally. I think it's funny. So when I started my Instagram for my business, I didn't want to. I've always been like a very private person. And I was like, please don't make me have to use this as a tool to like promote myself or show up there. And then, you know, as time went on, I realized like, okay, if you want to grow your business and if you want to empower other business owners with like PR and putting themselves out there, then you have to lead by example.
Yeah, I think that's so funny.
Yeah.
Like, I see you as such a confident person and like you're so cute. And so it feels to me like it lends itself to be like you, like I would think that you would be all over Instagram, and like to hear that that's not necessarily like your personality. I think it's so interesting.
Totally. Honestly, it took me a long time to get to this point, and now I'm at a place where I think, you know, for me, when I started my business, I had left the corporate world and was still like very focused on what people in corporate had to say about me. And in all of the corporate jobs I had, we were always encouraged to like, you know, you represent whatever company you work for. And I was never really encouraged to have like this public facing persona in really any of those jobs. So it was really uncomfortable for me to start putting myself out there because everyone that I knew in my network before that wasn't. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder what they're saying, or I wonder what they think. And now there's been enough space between that time that I don't really think about that anymore. And I've been lucky enough to like surround myself and build a community of people that really like to build each other up and are interested in what everyone else has to say on Instagram and supporting each other. So that really makes a difference too, that community that you kind of find. Then everyone just engages with each other's content and it's great.
Yeah, this is what I'm still struggling to find. I would love to I think I've always been like searching for that community. And how do you do that? Like if you're a business owner and you're like, I make products for X, Y, or Z target audience, like how do you go and find those? Because even for me, like sometimes, I've done the whole like searching hashtags on Instagram and like scrolling through some of those things, and like I'll engage with a couple of those posts that I like find interesting, but I don't think it's always that easy to go and find like exactly what you're looking for. Maybe I'm just
No,
not.
it's not. Honestly, I think we've like networking, the word, feels like very transactional. Like I was never someone that liked to go to like corporate networking events, and I still don't, because it feels very inauthentic. It's like speed dating. You like meet somebody, introduce yourself, you kind of suss out how you can help each other, and then you're on to the next person. So I find that we can get into like a bit of a spiral on Instagram in the same way, where we're just like trying to like slide into different DMs, or we like posts or leave comments that like, maybe they feel like they come from a good place, but then like the person receiving them is like, oh, is this person just trying to sell me something? I think what helps is just like following the people that you really resonate with and admire their work. And I got to a place where if someone posts something that really resonates with me, even if it's on their stories, I will tell them. I decided that I'm going to be the compliment queen. So I'm like, if someone's posting something that resonates on Instagram, or, I scroll through on TikTok and think something's funny, like I'm going to leave a comment because I want someone to engage with me. And that's how I started to meet some of the people that I am quite close to now, is just through like, first you send a couple like timid DMs, and then you start to really like get along with that person. And I was actually thinking about this concept the other day, like internet friends. I never really understood, but now I feel like I have some. Like, wow, never thought I would get to this place. But it comes from a place of just admiring other people's work and like not feeling like you can't tell them that.
Yeah. I've experienced it recently, I think, through the podcast. Like this is the first time I've ever had internet friends. Like I, would send a DM to a girl online and be like, hey, like I love your brand, or like I love your content. Like, would you want to be featured on the podcast? And they were like shook that I even asked them. And then we get on and we have so much fun. And then afterwards it's like, oh my gosh, now I have a friend in LA. I have a friend in Canada. Like I have all these friends all over the place. And truly, like, this is, I guess, weirdly kind of like me, like, be like, hey, do you want to grab coffee? And then we chat for like an hour, and then we're like homies afterwards. And it does really like develop such a different connection. And to your point, I think people don't use compliments enough. Like, I talk about this all the time now that I'm on the receiving end of people like wanting stuff from me. Usually I've always been like on the other side where I've like wanted stuff from them. And so often I get like such generic messages of people being like, hi, my person is X, Y, and Z. I think that they would be a great fit for your podcast because they did X, Y, and Z. And it's like, I know that you're copying and pasting this and sending out to a million, and I respect the hustle. I've done it. But at the same time, I've also had people where they come in and they're like, I really loved this episode that you had, like you, and you're like, it really resonated with me. Like, I would love to be on the podcast. And that to me is like an immediate yes. I'm like, oh my gosh, you took literally not, maybe you didn't even listen to the whole episode. Maybe you took 20 minutes out of your time to just listen and see if you liked it, and then sent a message just being like, hey, loved it. And that like really isn't that difficult. And also I think it's an important strategy if you're not like casting a super wide net, right? Like you're not messaging 100 people, which it would be impossible to listen to 100 podcast episodes and then message people. But like if you're targeting people that you resonate with, like the likelihood of that becoming a better relationship is also higher. So it's almost like quality over quantity.
Yes, and that's actually what separates like good PR from bad PR. And
Yeah.
like I always say, so I run a couple different programs for small business owners to understand how they can do their own PR. And I say the exact same thing. It's quality over quantity. Like take your time, listen to a couple episodes, find a way to connect with the host because podcasting is, I always say it's like a privilege to go on someone else's podcast. Someone is opening the door for you to speak to their audience. So take it seriously. So tell them like why you connect with them as a host or why you like might be able to share something fascinating with their audience. But it's like you have to get past the transactional element of like, hey, like I have this person or I'm this person that wants to share something. Like stop making it all about you. I actually think that's just sales 101.
Yeah.
Like it's actually about the audience.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It's almost
not
like,
about you.
ask not what they can do for you, but what can you do for them? And like,
yes,
truly podcasts are a platform. And part of the reason why I started this podcast was because like I'm an aspiring entrepreneur and I selfishly want to talk to all these people because I want to learn all of these things about starting and running your own business. But at the same time, what I was actually talking to my friend about this the other night, like what I really enjoy about my podcast is that I love to my cat. I love to feature I love to feature new founders because in my mind, like these people are the people who are doing the coolest stuff right now. They're doing stuff that nobody's ever done before, or maybe they're doing it, but in a very new way. And they're at a vulnerable place where they need to get the word out about their business. And to get to be the person that features those people, like feels to me like a privilege. Like that is what I get excited about. It's why I'm here. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, definitely. It's so like, it's such a mutually beneficial process, but it takes like both people need to recognize just like, you know, time is money these days. So by, you know, a podcast host giving you a platform to speak to their audience and then vice versa, a founder giving you their time to speak to them, to your audience, like it's all good for everyone, but like let's try and build authentic connections on that. Like, let's just like take that transactional element away from it and just be humans about it.
Like just be a regular person.
Yeah.
I kind of also want to jump back a little bit and I want to like, I'm curious to know how you got into PR. I want to know your story of going from corporate to starting your own business. Like I want to know everything about that.
Yeah. So my career is about 10 years long now, almost. So I started my career in sports PR. So I live up in Canada, but I was working in the golf industry and I was pitching to major sports outlets when I was like fresh out of university and I loved it. And
wait, were
then
you like always super into sports or was that really?
That was like what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to eventually be a sports anchor, like work on like a sports network and be on TV. But you realize, yeah, maybe one day it will still happen. I'm like going to revisit that dream, I think. But yeah, you realize like, okay, this is a hard industry. I felt like really overworked and I was really underpaid. And I was living in Vancouver in Canada, which is like the most expensive city in Canada and also like in the world to live in. So I just thought to myself, hey, why not try something different? So I then got a job in university athletics. So I was still working in sports, but then I was working more on like the marketing and event side of things. So it was a change, but it was a good change for me because I started to round out my skill set. And yeah, from there, I did that for a couple of years, also got really burnt out, story of my life. And then in the next job I had after that was actually really interesting. I always say it was kind of like the job that defined the rest of my career. But I was working in a really small community. And in this community, there was this shopping center, like a mall, that their retail offering wasn't amazing, but they like had these amazing community events, and they would have fashion shows, they would have Christmas shows, they would have all these, like, despite not having the retail, they really focused on making it a community gathering place. And I had met the marketing director at the time and thought she was awesome. I actually thought to myself, like, she's so cool, I want to be like her one day. And then she eventually got promoted and was hiring to replace her. And I ended up replacing her. So she became my boss, and then I was her marketing manager. So
how did you spin that? Like, did you just meet her and you were like, I'm super passionate, like, please hire me? Or like,
well, yeah. Okay. Now we're digging deep. So I actually had met her because I was pitching her sponsorship opportunities for the university that I worked at. Like, I was like going out into the community. I was trying to find community sponsors for our events and a couple other things we were doing. And so I had met her in a meeting, just like that I had set up to pitch her, try and get her to sponsor whatever it was. And we both really connected and thought each other were awesome. And yeah, that's when I left thinking like, okay, she's cool. Definitely like, inspiration, role model. And I didn't know this, but she had left the meeting also being like, oh my gosh, that girl was so cool, interesting, great energy, all the different things. So we're thinking the same things about each other.
I love this.
And then a couple months later was when she was promoted and was hiring for this job. And I actually had reached out to her because I saw it on LinkedIn, and she had actually said to me, I'm not sure you're quite qualified enough, or something to that extent. Yeah. I don't want to misphrase, but it was something to that extent. Right. Not sure that you have quite the right experience, but like, yeah, let's talk about it. And so then we talked about it, and I, essentially grinded for that job. Yeah. I think I went through like 3 interviews. I put together an entire like project case study for the 3rd and final interview. Like, I wanted that job. And then I got it.
I love this. I love that you were like inadvertently like interviewing for the job this whole time.
Yes.
And just by like showing her, this is wild. I think this is one of those like synchronistic moments where you're like, I wasn't trying, but it ended up working out.
Yeah.
And I think like, I relate to this because I feel like it kind of happened like with when I got my 9 to 5, like I was house sitting this girl's cats who is now my boss. And like, she was the one who recommended me for the job. Like, she also knows my brother. So like we'd like, went to like a couple of like gatherings together and like had chatted a couple of times, and she was the one who referred me. And like, it was so funny when I got into the office because everyone was like, oh, like you're the girl who used to watch Lauren's cats. And I was like, yes. And they're like, how did you become an office manager? And I was like, well, I actually used to be like a project manager. I ran like a $23 million project. Like, it doesn't seem as out of the blue as it like might appear. But like, it's funny because when you're like inadvertently putting yourself in these scenarios, like things always work out in a way that you don't even expect. So you started working in this job. What was your like official capacity with them? Was it like marketing and events?
Yeah, so I was the marketing manager. So I oversaw all of our marketing activities. So events, advertising, PR, community relations, guest services, all of it. And that's actually now...
Was that like stressful? Was like, or did you think like you were totally ready to be able to do that job?
No, I loved it. I was like, give this to me. I am so organized. And I think for myself, like, it actually felt like I was running a business. Like the amount of, just responsibility that I had, and ability to work on so many different things really gave me the power that I needed to feel like, hey, I'm really contributing to something here. Yeah. So it really was the job that actually, if I think about my business today, a lot of the elements and things that I learned in that particular job, I still think about now. And my more holistic approach to marketing and PR definitely stems from that really specific job. I was there for almost 4 years by the end.
When did you have the confidence to go from like corporate job lifestyle to starting your own business?
Yeah. So that job was amazing. And then the property or the mall that I worked at eventually sold to new owners.
Okay.
And I knew it wasn't gonna quite be the same. The new owners, I could tell from their website, it was a larger real estate company that definitely didn't prioritize marketing and creativity the way that the old owners had. So at the same time, I was offered a different job, a new opportunity in real estate development, which was something I was
Hmm.
really, really passionate about and interested in. And so timing is everything. Just
Yeah.
as the property was switching hands to new owners, I ended up just leaving to an entire new company. And it was in that company when I could just feel like misaligned with like the
Hmm.
company's values and what my values were. And I was hoping that it would turn out to be this amazing experience. And I really saw myself at this new company for a long time, but I just had to prioritize my mental health.
Yeah.
And there came a point when I was like, it is clear to me that what I want this job to be, it's never going to be that.
Yeah.
So, for the first time in my entire life, I was like so burnt out, so tired, so emotional. And I'm like, we're just going to leave and figure it out,
Yeah.
which is
I
not my personality.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like so much of marketing, like when you market for a company, like you have to be passionate about them.
Yeah.
You have to love what they stand for because your entire job is to simply tell the world like why this company is so great and why you should choose them.
Yeah.
And if your values aren't aligned, it's almost like your subconscious is like, we're lying. Like we're not into this every
Yes.
day.
Yes. I definitely felt like I was living a bit inauthentically at the time, just based on some things that were happening like within the organization. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right. And
Yeah.
I just, my partner's self-employed. He's owned a landscaping company for the past couple of years. So he had kind of put the bug in my ear when he could tell that I was struggling and said like, hey, like what if you started your own business? And I was like, who, me? Like, no.
You're like, not even.
I'm like, I can't do that, which is, I actually had a moment when I was really sad that I felt that way. Like I was
Mm.
sad that I had such a block or mental block that I felt like I couldn't run my own business. And I remember feeling just like, I hate that I feel this way about myself, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think I'm an entrepreneur. I don't think I have it in me.
How did
So
you get
yeah,
through
I
that?
actually started from a dark place.
How did you get through that though? Like what steps did you take? Because I think this is an important conversation. Like
Yeah.
so many of the listeners for this podcast probably like have a dream, have an idea,
Yeah.
and either don't have the confidence and or don't know where to start. And I bet a lot of people have had this conversation with themselves, being like, I am incapable. I mean, like me, I have been told
Yeah.
that I am incapable of like
Yep.
making this a business, of like making this a full-time dream. And like so many times I've been told like, oh, I don't have the skill set for that, you know, but like
Yep.
I just powered through. But in your case, it was almost also like you were telling yourself like you couldn't do this. So I
Yeah.
wonder what like advice or how you got through it.
Yeah, I was definitely, and probably I still continue to be, like the hardest part. The mindset is the hardest part of being an entrepreneur. Honestly, when I first got started, it was all a slow roll. So I
Mm.
left that job. I picked up a couple clients. Most of them were personal connections. And
Yeah.
then I ended up getting a part-time job at an agency just to be able to like still pay the bills because I
Right.
still wasn't actually sure. Like I wasn't sure that I was diving all into
You were dipping your
entrepreneurship.
toe.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, like let's do like best of both worlds and then I'll
Yeah.
see what I like better. So yeah, I started slow and I just started to build up the confidence. So I worked with a very small handful of clients that felt like friends to me. So like I don't want to say the stakes were low, but it was like a very comfortable environment. I felt like these are people that love me, so they believe in me and they believe in my work. So I started slow and controlled. And then once I decided I was going to quit the part-time agency job and just focus on my business full-time, it was because I just knew in my gut that that agency role and what I was doing, what I thought maybe I was going to do full time and for the rest of my life, it just wasn't feeling right. And I think my intuition has gotten so much stronger since that time. That was almost a year ago. And I'm like, trust your gut. You're feeling that depressed, unaligned, miserable feeling again that you had in the last job you left. So like, listen to that. It's trying to tell you something.
Totally.
So
I think about this all the time. Like, it's so, especially as women business owners, like, it is our superpower that we have our intuition, we have our emotions, because physiologically we run businesses different than men. It's just like, genuinely, it's just science, because a lot of the times, like, we need more rest, physically speaking. So like, we're not going to run our businesses in the same way that men do. And we lean more towards creativity. And that's another reason why we're not going to be running, like, those businesses in the same way that men are. And truly, because we have that energy, our superpower is our intuition. We will make decisions differently. Like, yes, we have systems in place. And yes, there are still like logical aspects of our business that need to get done on a regular basis. However, we know when something's not right, and we know how to make decisions based off of that. And because of that, we have the ability to exceed quickly and efficiently, because it's almost like we just think a different way. Like, it's not like some random Harry Potter magic. Like, it's just, we think differently, and we use our emotions to help guide us and to course correct when things don't feel right. And like, I have said this a million times on this podcast, I would like be blind without that compass to use, because truly, like, it has always served me well.
Yes. I think one of the best things that you can do is just like tune into that. And it's helped me even so much now, where I do have more and more clients and more inquiries. Like, I listen to my gut. Like, if there's a client from the very beginning where I'm like, I'm not sure about this, I don't think it's going to be quite right, I believe that feeling, and I won't work with that client. I will just tell them, I don't think I'm the right service provider for you and what you're looking for, because I just know I'm avoiding whatever problem. Doesn't matter how much money's attached to it. Like, I just won't put myself through that anymore.
And like, the worst thing too is getting over that fear of saying no. Especially like, as a new entrepreneur, you're like, oh my gosh, I have all this stuff, like, and people coming to me, and like, to your point, like, the money is good, and like, you're staring at your new business and you're like, I gotta make the money to make this work, because otherwise, like, my dream isn't gonna work. And so you get in the mindset of being like, I have to say yes to everything. But when you're getting that like icky feeling about a situation or like a potential client, and you're like, I should say yes because it's good money, but at the same time, like, I have such a weird feeling about that. And to your point, inevitably it's because something is going to happen later that it's going to save you from. But like, saying no feels so hard, and it's like uncomfortable.
It does. And then you're like, oh my gosh, like, am I, like, if I say no to this paycheck, like, am I, like, I think we've been conditioned to think that we have to overcome these hard things to like be a better business owner, or be a stronger business owner. And that goes back to that masculine mentality. Like, just get through it, push through it to the next level. And while I can agree that some projects, some clients, whatever it is, are going to be more challenging, you can call them like expanders, because maybe they make you nervous, because like, you're like, oh my gosh, what an amazing opportunity. Can I do this? That's a different feeling than like, this is going to be a problem because these personalities are going to clash, or I have a feeling this person won't pay me, or like they're not being honest or telling me, like that's a different feeling. Just learning what those two different feelings are, because I have it all the time and I have to think to myself, am I nervous about this because it feels like, holy crap, what an opportunity? Or am I nervous about this because I don't trust this person? Two totally different things.
Totally. And like I've started to make a rule where if it's a big decision, I don't make it immediately. Like I always sleep on really big decisions. And if somebody is pushing you to make a big decision, like right then and there, I'm like, you're just helping me make the choice to say no, because like if people don't respect that you need to think about making a big decision, that says a lot about them. And to go into business with someone like that, that's going to like push you and almost like bully you into making a decision that you're not comfortable with, like it's just going to be bad for you later down the line.
Yeah, definitely. And like nothing is that urgent. Like
honestly,
nothing is that urgent that you can't just take like 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever you need to digest whatever it is.
Totally. So after you went like full in, you quit the part-time agency, what happened next?
So that was May of 2023. So not too long ago, but not
like
that
long
just
ago,
happened. Less than a year ago. Yeah, it just happened. And you know, it felt really natural. Like it just felt like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I just all of a sudden felt like things are falling into place. I understand what I'm doing now. I understand how I can serve people, and I understand that I don't have to have this tight grip on money and like, where is it going to come from? Like, how am I going to make this work? Like, when you open yourself up to knowing that like if you live in alignment and like serve with your gifts, the money is going to come. So like focus on the mentality first.
This is wild. I could not agree with this more. I personally have had such weird experiences surrounding money that like it always shows up when I need it. And I was unemployed for like a year, and technically unemployed. I was self-employed. I was doing Rover and WAG. So like I was freelancing and like working on the blog at the same time. And there were definitely times when I was like flat broke, like beyond broke. And I was never, I mean, the crazy thing is it's like when you are flat broke, you start to panic and you're like, oh shit. And then you start to get desperate, and that energy never attracts more money. It only perpetuates the fact that you have none. And what's so interesting, I started to shift my mindset, not into like an abundance mindset, I would say. It was more, I understood that there were times when it goes, but there will also be times when it comes back. So I would think about it like a wave and like the tide. I was like, there will be times when it wanes and there will be time when it waxes. And like, if I was in a time when it was gone, like I wasn't stressed about it because I knew it would always come back, and it always did. And even now, like now that I have a full-time job, because what I really wanted to get out of for freelance was I just didn't have the financial stability that I really wanted. And it came in the fact that like I couldn't buy my friends' birthday gifts. Like that was stressful. Like being able to see them was stressful. So I was like, I need to change up my life and change up my environment. And so when I got my full-time job, I was like, oh, this is great. You know, I'm financially stable. I kept some of my old clients for Rover just because I was like, you know, it's a good extra couple $100, you know, on a weekend, and it's not a big deal to me, and I enjoy it. And it's so interesting because I just recently got a car, and I was like, how am I going to pay for my parking garage? Because parking in San Francisco is terrible. And like the parking garage is like $300 a month. And I was like, I genuinely like don't,
oh my gosh,
like things are going to be tight, you know, like, and then all of a sudden I did the math the other day because I was still picking up Rover clients during the weekends. And I'm like, I'm good. Like I didn't even realize that I was good, but I was good because I was still getting client requests. And like, even as I was on a walk with a dog, a new person was like, oh my gosh, like, are you on Rover? Like, will you be able to take my dog? And I was like, actually, no, I can't. Like I work. I work now. Like I just keep, these are my, like, but it was funny because like, it's still coming. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad that somebody else is talking about this, because sometimes when you bring this
Yeah.
up, people look at you like you're insane. They're like, oh,
For sure.
you're privileged. Like, you don't get it. And I'm like, no, like, it's
Yeah.
simply a mindset change where you're like, instead of being
Mm-hmm.
stressed and desperate, you just exist in the state of like neutrality, where you
Yeah.
understand that like it will come, especially to your point, when you're aligned. Like,
Exactly.
that's the key, is that you have to be aligned. You have to be following your, whatever you want to call it, your gut, your heart, your like true passion, whatever. I don't know. I don't care what you call it, but
Yeah.
like, you know, when you're doing it, you know, when it's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that was a complete game changer for me when I decided to be self-employed full time was I invested. First, I was working with a life coach. So I did that for like
Mm.
5 months. And then now I'm in a more formal business coaching program. So
Yeah.
it's a bit more intensive. There's homework. There's like very, very high interactivity with the mentors in the program. And both those things, the life coach and now this program, have been very important to me in maintaining that positive mindset. And in both cases, I was always, or I am always encouraged to look at all the ways that your business provides abundance or serves
Mm.
you. And it's like, it's not always a money thing. And that's what
Yeah.
I always would get stuck on, where I'm like, it's a slow month. So like my business isn't serving me. Like right now, it's not. But once I was able to see, like, okay, even if you go through a slow month, well, look, you were fine. You covered your bills. You still had enough, but your business was trying to tell you something. So
Mm.
maybe it was, you know, you have to kind of evolve into whatever this next level of your business is. Or like, for me, it was getting better at talking about my services and doing the self-promotional aspect on social media. That
Interesting.
was what my business was trying to tell me. So it's like, really listening to what these things tell us. So the money thing is like, okay, it always comes back. Keep your vibration high, operate
Mhm.
at the like vibration that attracts that money. And then same for
Mm.
your business, like
Yeah.
attracting the clients. Like one time a mentor had said to me, like, you don't get clients, you receive them. So you have to open
Mm.
yourself up to receive those clients. And now that has totally, because I just won't grind it out for people. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to work that hard for someone's work because I don't think I need to. I want clients that want to work with me. I shouldn't have
Yeah.
to feel like I'm convincing someone. The same with money. Well, and they're all attached. So yeah, it's really powerful stuff.
It's literally life-changing. And I want to know about your life coach situation. Like,
Yeah.
when did you get a life coach? How did you find them? What did they teach you? Give me the lowdown.
Okay, so I never thought I would be someone that works
Yeah.
with a life coach, first
Yeah.
of all. I remember hearing about them like on reality TV and stuff, and I thought to myself, like, who invests money into this? Like, like really?
Yeah.
Anyways, I got to a point where I was like, okay, so I'm like highly therapized. I go to a therapist and I felt like that was good. But then I was like, I think I need someone that's a bit closer to the situation. And so a lot of life coaching programs are a bit more like high touch. So you can like message them more frequently, you do more frequent calls, and yeah, it's a bit more of an investment. But I'm like, the monthly therapist session isn't going to cut it. Like I need something else. And I wanted someone that was a bit more impartial and maybe didn't know like me and all my past. But I just found her on Instagram. I just knew that this was like something I was starting to look for. So I started following a couple different ones and just had a couple different conversations and then ended up picking one that really resonated with me. For me, like manifestation is obviously like it's something that like we talk about, but we don't really talk about. And it's like, okay, I knew that was something that I wanted to know more about, but I'm so rational and realistic that I needed someone who was going to tell me the psychology about it. Like, because obviously manifestation is tied to psychology and the mindset. So I needed to know the science. So for me, that was important. So I kind of did my homework and found someone who could explain the science behind manifestation and the psychology aspect, and that helped a lot. But the experience was great. I worked with that life coach for 5 months, and I feel it was good to have like a cheerleader, like someone
Yeah.
that was like celebrating your wins with you, because sometimes it's hard to like celebrate when you're a business owner. You're like, did that, on to the next thing, and then you don't
Yeah.
give yourself enough time to like, oh my god, I did that.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's like such an important part of the process. Like for me, I know I was super like high achieving my whole life. And
Yeah.
as a kid, it was like those were the things that were just expected. Like you were expected to be high achieving, and anything less
Yeah.
was like a like failure. And so anytime something good happened or like exciting, there wasn't like a celebration. It was like, duh, like that's what's supposed to happen. Like you don't need to celebrate that.
Yeah.
And through like adulthood, that was the case. Like I would do all of these things. Like I would get a master's degree, I would publish a book, then I would publish another one. And I was like 25, and I never
My
spent the
gosh.
time to be like, this is really cool. And it was worse because feeling excited about those accomplishments felt wrong. Like it just did. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, duh, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But yeah, it's like, how did, like nobody ever spends the time to really let it sink in. And even now, I think like it might be even still kind of tricky for me.
Yeah. I notice it a lot in myself and in clients. Like I work with a lot of women that are around the same age that I am. And it's hard on the publicity front to talk about these accomplishments, because I think we've all been conditioned to like, well, yeah, you should just be doing that. We don't need to like talk. We don't need to brag. And so that's actually the biggest stumbling block for a lot of publicity and public relations, especially for like personal brands or founders. There's this element of shame where like if you
Yeah.
go to talk about your achievements, all of a sudden it feels wrong or like you're
Yeah.
bragging.
Yeah, I think this is such the case sometimes, like, and I think this is probably why influencers get such a bad rep.
Yeah.
I think it's like half people are jealous, like they want their lives, to look that cool. And then at the same time, it's also like, oh, well, you're just so like self-absorbed.
Yeah.
And I love an influencer. I think influencers are like the OG entrepreneurs, like they've been out there like
Yeah.
hustling from the beginning. And now that people are really starting to understand like what kind of a business model that is, they're like, oh wait, no, we think it's really cool. But like people still give them flack. And I'm like, why?
Oh, yeah, I know. And not that I would ever consider myself an influencer, but I recently received my first like troll on my Instagram. And I was like, okay, like seriously, why are we even like, we're still doing this? We're
Yeah.
still like leaving mean comments on people's, online profiles. And for what? Like, that's not
Really?
serving any of us.
I genuinely thought that we were like past that point. Like, I don't know.
Yes, me too. I lived in a world where I thought it like that didn't happen anymore. And then, yeah, I got mine. I'm like, okay. And this is actually what I say to a lot of clients. I'm like,
Yeah.
when you open yourself up to publicity and like you want to cultivate more of an online presence and, kind of elevate your business that way. Yeah, you open yourself up to like people are going to say more things about you and probably to your face or like online, and you just have to be prepared for that. But
Yeah.
I didn't really think that it was going to happen to me.
I actually got kind of excited when it happened to me. Like when I was publishing my blog, somebody like responded with like a weird comment being like, oh, the writing is terrible, or like this is such like a fluff article. And I got kind of excited about it because I was like, oh, like my first hate. And then when I read it, like
Totally.
when I read the comment, this guy
Yeah.
was giving me like writing advice, but like none of his like some of his words were spelled incorrectly, like it wasn't grammatically correct in terms of the sentence. And I was like, oh, it's okay. Like it's not a real comment. I don't have to like
Yeah.
be mad about it. I was excited because I was like, oh yeah, like a comment. And so I actually responded and I was like,
Yeah.
thank you so much for the advice. Like I'll take that out, noted with thanks, essentially.
I was like, I don't have time for this and I do not need you in my sphere. So delete, block, bye. I actually have gotten to a point where when you work on your mindset so much, and honestly, this is going to I don't want people to think that this is all I do, but I really believe that mindset is the like block
Yep.
to entrepreneurship. I honestly just do. And so
Yeah.
I've actually gotten to a place where I cannot let the negativity in. Even with my partner, sometimes he can lean a bit more into negativity with the way he'll phrase certain things. And I
Yeah.
literally say, like, we're not talking like that. Like, I just
Yeah.
have to keep this like optimistic delusion that everything's going to work out. And so if you have something negative to say, you cannot come in here right now.
Honestly, like it's not even delusion. That's just how life works. Like when you know
Yeah.
that everything is going to work out, it just does. Like
Yeah.
you're totally right. Like mindset honestly is everything. What you think is reflected back at you in your reality in so many different ways. So if all you do
Mhm.
is think negatively, like that's what you're going to be looking at every day. And if you're surrounded by people who speak negatively, like that's going to influence your life as well. And
Yeah.
I don't think people talk enough about mindset and entrepreneurship. Like
Yeah.
the thing about entrepreneurs is that you are your business. You
Yeah.
make it yours from the day you have the idea, and it is you. Like you are a reflection of your business, and in your business is a reflection of you. And if your mind is all over the place, your business is likely all over the place. I've seen it. Like I have
Yeah.
friends of friends whose businesses are truly like a reflection of them in so many ways.
Yeah.
And if you don't spend the time to get your mind in the right place, it there will be points in your business when you're confronted with that, and you have to either like rise to the occasion, work on yourself, or you're going to just watch your business fail.
Yeah. And it's a hard work. Like, even for
Oh,
me, I would say, November and December were slower months in my business. And I had went from making the most money I'd ever, like, never even imagined that my business would be able to produce that much to then, going through a slower season. And if we would have had this conversation a month ago, might have looked a bit different because I felt myself go back to that like negative space. And I knew I had to pull myself out of that to be able to like forge forward and receive and like,
yeah,
find happiness.
totally.
But you
Yeah.
gotta learn how to pull yourself out of those lows.
Yeah. And like, now that you're on the other side of it, I imagine like things are much different now.
Yes. Well, it's funny. So when I was going through that, like, a month ago, it was slower. And I knew that it wasn't really a me problem. Like, it's the holiday season. If any client would have come to me complaining about like slowness, not enough eyes on their content,
Yeah.
nothing seems to be working, I would have been like, well, it's the holiday season. But
Yeah.
I couldn't take my own advice. I was like, why aren't people reaching out for their PR needs? But like the answer was obvious to me. But yeah, it was really hard. And then I just journaled every single night. Like
Oh my gosh. Yes.
from like a month ago, every night I was just like, I'm now going to come up with the plan of like how I pull myself out of this and like retrain my brain to just believe that like all the good stuff is coming. And I did it every single night, which is quite impressive, honestly.
Yeah. Journaling for me like legitimately saved my life. Like that was how
Yeah.
I got started in my journey of like
Yeah.
mindset work. And like I was journaling every day, and now I do it when I need it, but like I had to
Yeah.
build the habit of doing it every day, and it was every day for like years. Like I have the notebook still,
Yep.
and my journey started because I did this thing called the artist way, but journaling, I think it's
Okay.
such an important thing for everyone to do. Like I'm always like, if people are coming at me with like their negative nonsense, I'm like, you probably should just go home and journal. Like that's what that sounds like to me.
Totally. But it is impossible. Like if someone does not journal, like it's like impossible to help them understand like the
Yeah.
benefits. Like I actually have not figured out. I use my partner as an example here. Like I'm like, you should journal. And
Yep.
then he's like, about what? He's like, how does that help? And I'm just,
You're like,
I
it
don't know.
just
I'm not the
does,
person to
because
like
you
sell you on
start
this.
those
Exactly.
that first page is always like, oh, here's what I did today or something like that, you know? But by inevitably the
Yeah.
third page, you're like, oh, I have this childhood trauma and that's why I'm affected today. And like,
Yeah.
you just start with like the most
Yeah.
monotonous random things, but it always ends up like enlightening you. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
just like tell your husband, be like,
Yeah.
just be like, I don't care what you write about. Start with your day. Like, I don't care, but just write 3 pages
Yeah.
and then come and talk to me. Like 3 full
Yes.
pages. And like, then tell me that like journaling is weird or whatever, because like it works.
Totally. I know. I'm still working on him on that one. I'm like, since we're going away, I'm like, hey, when we're away, that's a
Yeah.
perfect time to start.
Yeah.
And he gave me a maybe. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to do the 3 pages thing. So
Yeah.
we're getting there. We're getting
Yeah.
there.
I've done that with my friends and now they're like obsessed with journaling. So it worked for them.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping you'll have to let me know if it works.
Yeah, I will.
Well, I think that is the perfect time for us because I don't want to take up more of your time before your trip. But this is such
Yeah.
a good conversation. I think this is like going to be pretty amazing. There's so much important info in here, and I really
Yeah.
appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you so much for having
Yeah.
me. And yeah, I loved all of your previous episodes. I thought
Oh,
they were
thank
all so
you.
awesome.